Happy to have him join us here on 95.7 The Game earlier than usual. Steve Kerr brought to you by Xfinity. Stay connected, protected, and entertained. Steve, thank you so much for joining us today, man. That was about as satisfying a Warriors game I think anybody's watched in the last 3 years. Was that the most fun you've had in the last 3 years?
Well, considering the importance of the game, being a playoff game, the last two nights have really been incredibly fun and satisfying for us as a coaching staff. I know for our fans, people who were there at Chase, it was rocking. So it was a lot of fun to just kind of get back to where we were a couple of years ago, and we got a lot of work ahead, but it's an exciting time.
Yeah, obviously there's no reason to celebrate anything yet. There's a lot of work to be done left in this series. But it's one thing to beat an NBA team for a 2-0 lead. It's another thing entirely to cause what felt like a team-wide meltdown where coaches are screaming and benches are shoving and an MVP candidate gets ejected because he gets so frustrated. That was really clinical, shall we say.
Well, yeah, we executed our game plan really well. We kept Denver from getting the easy stuff that they thrive off, the back cuts and the transition threes and layups. And so we stayed solid. We did that by taking care of the ball and just being efficient at both ends. So it's really, really two good efforts that put us in the spot we're in now. But now, it gets tough. You go on the road and you got to go to Denver and get one at least. So that's the plan.
After what you've seen in the first two games, how much do you expect Denver to be different? Because the things they were trying to do in games 1 and 2 didn't seem to work very well. Do you think they have sort of not another gear, but other cards to play, or is it really more about how you guys play at this point?
No, I think for them, everything turns to, going home and defending home court. That's got to be the mentality in the playoffs. If you're down 2-0, you kind of lick your wounds and you get back in front of your own home fans, and you're just telling your team, if you're Mike Malone, you're just telling your team one game. Let's just go win one game, and then things change, and that's how the playoffs work. There really is a big momentum shift with each game, and so the focus is just to take care of one game and see what happens next. And so we got to be ready for the force that they're going to bring and the energy that their crowd will bring.
It feels like the biggest momentum swing, Steve, in this series so far has been when you have gone to the three-guard lineup. Is this a situation where you're starting to look at it as a break in case of emergency, or is this sort of a lead punch that you'd like to throw, or is this the best counterpunch there is in the NBA for you?
Well, it's been great, but we've only really done it twice now for, I think, maybe 12, 14 minutes total. It's worked really well in this matchup, and we'll keep going to it, obviously. But we've been hoping to get to this lineup all season long. We just haven't been able to because of health reasons. So The main thing is it's good to be, for the most part, healthy and getting guys together on the floor again and building a little bit of rhythm again. If
I hear another broadcaster, another fan calling in, another writer trying to come up with a nickname for this group, I'm going to snap, Steve. I really am. What do you call it?
I don't call it anything. I just tell the guys who I want to go in, and that's it. That's boring, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, it's perfect.
But it works. I wish we could spread the message.
It's the guys going in lineup.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That doesn't really have much of a ring to it, does it?
It doesn't need to. It's fine.
I agree.
Draymond Green's game last night was about as complete as he's had in a good while. He had some games like this, before he got hurt, but nothing in a game as important. Did this remind you, and this is an unfair question, but did this remind you of him in 17 or 18? Or has he done this so many times that you almost come to not be surprised when he does it in a moment like this?
Well, he's done it a million times, but we haven't done this collectively for 3 years, so we haven't been in the playoffs since 2019. So for Draymond, it's just great to be back on the stage where he plays his best, where he uses his energy and his brain, and where we can just get out and run and play. And, as far as he is concerned, I just think that he's healthy now. He had obviously the back issue, and to come back off of that, it took him a few weeks to really get his conditioning, but it's all there now. You can see it and you feel it, and it's great to see because he's impacting winning the way that only he can.
Steve Kerr here on 95.7 The Game. We have heard so often that the difference between a playoff series is the familiarity that just happens when you're playing against a team, and it feels like that should make a series even harder. But for a guy like Draymond with such a basketball IQ, in a weird way, does the familiarity work against the other team? Like the more he gets to know and play and get reps against the similar opponent, the better he gets.
Yeah, I mean, he's such a cerebral player, and he gets a feel for what the other team is trying to do. And you play a team over and over again, there's just more that goes into his brain. And so, yeah, I think he gets better as he goes in various playoff series, depending on the opponent and what's happening. He just calculates it all, and this is when he's at his best.
What's the standard procedure for you when you have 2 days off in the middle of a playoff series? Do you go hard on, say, Wednesday and then taper off Thursday? Do you not go hard either day because energy is precious? I mean, how do you fill in the time as a team between now and the weekend and Thursday? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, today's a day off. The guys really needed a day off, and a day off for the coaches, a day off. We told everybody you're not allowed to come into the gym, and so tomorrow we'll get back to it, and we'll have a film session in the morning. Mostly just skill work, breaking a sweat, getting shots up, feeling the ball, and maybe going through a couple things on the court that we want to execute at both ends, and then we fly to Denver. But at this point, the guys who are playing the big minutes in the games, they need rest more than they need practice, and so it's a combination of recovery and mental preparation. The younger guys that's when they're playing their 3-on-3, 4-on-4, 5-on-5 with where we get some of our development coaches to play. Barbosa, Mikey Thompson, we throw a group on there so that guys like J.K. and Moses, Damian Lee, Juan, so they can all get out there and play a 5-on-5 on a day like tomorrow, for example. Because, as you guys know, the playoffs can change on a dime. Where all of a sudden there's an injury or a matchup change or a new opponent, and you have to throw different combinations out there, and all those guys have to stay ready.
So I finally, I got 2 small kids to tuck in at night now. I got a hall pass from my wife on Saturday to go to Game 1, and I crashed your press conference, and I think I botched my question to you, Steve, when I was asking about a governor on Steph Curry. I didn't mean in-game. You're asking him to do less in the moment of the game. What I meant was, were you emboldened by the success of Game 1 to continue to ask him to come off the bench as long as a minute restriction was part and parcel of the night's goal? That would have been a better question. Of course, I was much better the day after asking it. Do you think you might stick with this? I mean, we were just playing a soundbite from Draymond saying, Steph Curry is nobody's 6th man. You put him back in the starting 5 when you can. But at the same time, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And he seems to be thriving.
He is, but obviously it's not going to last long. He's one of the great players of all time.
Right.
So, at some point he'll be back in the starting lineup. It's going to all be based on his how many minutes he can play, and what the training staff is telling me. So in the meantime, Mike Malone said it after the game. He's the greatest sixth man in the history of the NBA. So it's not a bad problem to have.
It was something else. 34 points in 23 minutes in Game 2. He was spectacular. Could Phil Jackson have sold Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant coming off the bench in a playoff game? Like, where does your ability to sell that concept actually meet your superstar's egoless demeanor?
Yeah, it's really not my ability. It's just his willingness. And so it's not even a plea. It's just more a conversation. Here's where we are. Here's what it would look like. If you start, here's what it would look like if you came off the bench. What do you want to do? What do you prefer? Because my main thing is I want Steph to be comfortable, and the more comfortable he is, the better he's going to play. So it was really easy for him. He just thought about it and he said, "No, let's bring me off the bench. That makes more sense." And that was it. So there's no drama with Steph.
What would it feel like? What would it be like if he did have drama?
I don't know because I've never felt it.
Would you like to just see it once, just to say you saw it?
No, he's perfect just the way he is.
In terms of deciding when he no longer needs a minutes restriction, is that just simply something you work out with Rick and him, and you do it, Thursday morning on game day, or do you already have an idea without telling us what it is of how you want to do this Thursday night?
No, it's literally day to day based on how Steph responds. There's a scientific component to it as well. Steph is being monitored throughout his games and practices for the load on his body, and then he goes through his sessions in the training room. So all that information is accumulated, and then the training staff will come to me and say, here's what we're thinking tonight. And so it's a day-to-day thing.
Steve Kerr with us here on 95.7 The Game. Everyone's talked about the crucible of the playoffs, and until you go through it, there's no way to teach it or prepare a player for it. Jordan Poole has now been through 2 games in the playoffs. Do you know anything about Jordan Poole now that you didn't know before?
Well, he's gotten better this week than he was last week, and I mean that. And where it's really showing is in his defense. And it's been something we've been on him about all year, just defending without fouling, really taking on the challenge of taking on the best player. If the best player's coming at him, accept it and embrace it. And if there's a switch, same thing, get in front of that guy, defend him as best you can without fouling. And the value of that is hard to quantify. It's hard to explain, but you saw it last night a few times where we didn't foul, they made a tough shot, and we raced the ball back down even after a made shot and scored a bucket. Whereas if the other team's at the foul line, you can't do that. Then their defense is set and waiting for you after their free throws. That's probably the area that I've been most pleased with Jordan, as well as he's played, offensively, and as exciting as he is as a playmaker and shot maker. It's his defense that has really come around in the last week, and it's exciting to see.
Was there a moment, a game or a particular possession where you thought the light bulb had finally gone on to your satisfaction, or has this been a more gradual thing, more than just the last week, maybe over the last month?
No, I think it's more these past couple of games, and part of the great thing about the playoffs is that you can really lock in on a game plan, and you can explain to the players why, something is so important, and you show the other team and how they score. So we've been hammering home the point of defending without fouling. For the season, we're 29th in the league in fouling. I believe so. I believe it's not 29th, it's like 27th or somewhere down there. And even though we talk about it all season, it doesn't seem to register very well. And in the playoffs, with all the focus on the game plan, it has registered for our younger guys and for Jordan. and Gary. So now you're getting, 3-4 extra possessions a game where instead of the other team shooting free throws, you're racing down the floor, and that's obviously when we're at our best.
I don't know how many times you were defending in your playing days a player that was smaller than you on the court. Steph got Campazzo in the low post last night, and I swear to God, he put a Hakeem Dream Shake on him. Did you see that?
That was his favorite shot of the game.
Of course it was. It was incredible.
He loved that.
It was awesome. Ray and I were talking about this yesterday. How often is your team the bigger team in a basketball game? Has it happened once this year?
I don't give that a whole lot of thought, but we especially with Steph and Jordan out there together, it doesn't happen often. And without James Wiseman, we don't have a 7-footer out there. So, but this is we're very skilled, obviously, and we got guys who can pass and shoot, and they understand how to play together, and it's a lot of fun to coach them.
Is Denver peculiarly different than any of the teams that you see in the playoffs, the way they're constructed? Or is this not that much of an outlier, the way you're playing and the way they're playing against you?
I think they're different in that, they have an old school center in Jokic. Very few teams can impact the game the way Denver does down on the block. Philly can do it with Joel Embiid, but most teams it's high screen and roll all night. And then the other thing that's different, obviously Denver is missing, 2 of its top 3 players without, Porter and Murray. So, they've done a phenomenal job just putting together a team that has been able to thrive at both ends and win a lot of games. And but it's a different team than the one that was in the playoffs a couple of years ago in the bubble, coming back from 3-1 down because they don't have the weapons that they had then. But it's also a team that has a lot of continuity because these guys have been through the battles together, and we know that this is far from over. We got to go to Denver and take care of business because they're a good team and they've been together for a long time.
Do you ever have the time over a beer or 12 to think about what you would do if Denver was at full strength, or is that sort of a mental exercise you don't have to bother with ever?
I have not given that 1 second of thought.
Have you given 12 beers a second of thought?
4 beers, yes.
Were you beginning?
All that, those days are long gone.
Giving any second thoughts to who's shooting your technical free throws?
I've got 3 great options, so I let them sort it out when they're out on the floor together.
Like, how great is it to see the 2 guys joking about that after a game?
Yeah, it is pretty amazing. We've got 3 guys who finished over 90%. Am I right on that for the year? Did Clay finish over 90%?
Did he? Who's the third? Is Clay? Yeah, Clay. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Clay. I think Clay was at 90 as well. So I don't know that I've ever seen a team with 3 different guys.
Yeah, he's a little bit of a shooter too.
Plus.
A little bit of a shooter himself.
It's not bad.
It's really something else to see. There are basketball teams to be seen, and there are basketball cultures to be seen. And I mean this as a compliment. I think last night was a clinic about your culture that permeates your team, your bench, your starters, who's ever coming into the game. Bielitsa last night was just fantastic. Wiggins, again, just wearing beige and blending into everything. I don't know if there's a guy who is shutting down more backdoor screens than Wiggins. Am I right about that?
He's doing a great job. He's really doing an excellent job doing that and rebounding. He's got 17 rebounds through 2 games in the series. Knowing that we're small out there, he's really dedicated himself to the defensive end, taking away the layups and easy stuff, and then rebounding. So doing a great job.
Got to have one actual question that you're going to hate in every interview. How's Andre Iguodala doing? Do you expect to see him in Game 3?
We'll see. You know, we all have the day off today, so I'll see him tomorrow. I talked to him yesterday. He didn't seem to think it would linger for too long, so hopefully that's the case.
How cool is it? Do you see who's in your crowd ever? Did you notice that Bob Weir of the Grateful Dead was at your game last night?
I did. I looked up at the screen and I heard everybody cheering, and that was awesome. That was good stuff.
I want to thank you because of that last night. Bob Weir's coming on the show today at 4:15.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. I'm kind of a Grateful Dead guy. You ever make it to a Grateful Dead show?
I have not made it. I wish I had.
Oh, well, we'll have to talk about it sometime. I'll bring it up in a press conference. Thank you, Steve. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Good luck in Denver. Thank you very much. Steve Kerr.